Good afternoon, everyone. So, welcome to our talk that is organized by our Department of Religion and Philosophy and also our Center for Applied Ethics. This is a talk about, generally speaking, it's about bioethics, which some of you may know that we just had a academic conference in the last 2 days on the academic discussions on comparative philosophy and bioethics. But today we will continue that kind of discussions and have a very specific topic in bioethics, which is basically it's about the informed consent. Okay, and the title, as you can see in the PowerPoint, is a partially informed choice, less autonomous. So it is a very good topic in informed consent and then about bioethics. And for that, we have invited expert in this field. Okay, Professor Cong, Chong. She's assistant professor from the Department of Philosophy in Shanghai University, and yeah, she will give us a talk on this topic. Now, I guess before to speak about the informations, let us ask her to come out and then give her some souvenirs. Okay, so yeah, Professor Pong, please. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Chen. It's my honor to speak here at Best University. Yes, I'm Pang Cong from the assistant professor from Department of Philosophy, Shanghai University. And today, I'd like to discuss with you about I think an interesting question. Is a partially informed choice less autonomous? And the talk has 4 sections. The first section is the background, and the second section is the standard account, and why I think it's a little problematic. And the third section is a discussion about autonomous choice, ignorance, and information. And the final section is based on the above discussion. Based on the discussion, I presented a probabilistic account. Actually, the paper has been published, so if you are interested, you can read the paper to find more details. Maybe some of you are familiar with informed consent, but some of you are not. So I'll tell you some general things about it. Informed consent is a worldwide acknowledged ethical requirement in clinical practice and in biomedical research involving human subjects. And according to the requirement, a physician needs to obtain the patient's consent before conducting a medical intervention to the latter. And it's really important that the patient's consent needs to be sufficiently informed. In order to do this, he or she needs to receive sufficient information and has an adequate understanding of it. Why we require that one's consent must be sufficiently informed? The standard account is given by Faden and Beauchamp. They proposed a theory of informed consent in 1986. And it serves as the theoretical basis for the informed consent requirement. And in this book, they give a definition of informed consent. It's said that an informed consent is an autonomous action by a subject or a patient that authorizes a professional either to involve the subject in research or to initiate a medical plan for the patient, or both. So the key point is that they regard informed consent as a kind of autonomous action. If one's consent decision are to be regarded as substantially autonomous, they said it must be based on substantial understanding, and it requires one to receive and understand all the information material to one's choice. So I call it material information. But what is the scope of material information? And the key question for their theory is that in order to make a substantially autonomous choice, what information one needs to receive and understand. So we need to figure out what do they mean by substantially autonomy. So now let's get a closer look at their theory. As I said, they regard informed consent as a kind of autonomous action. It's argued that an autonomous action needs to satisfy three conditions: intentionality, understanding, and the non-control. I think they have a very interesting idea that they claim that autonomous choice have degrees. It's because three of the conditions, that is understanding and non-control, have degrees. They said because understanding have degrees, non-control have degrees, so autonomous choice have degrees too. So they set a threshold that is substantial autonomy. So for a choice to be substantially autonomous, it needs to be intentional, it needs to be based on substantial understanding, and it needs to be substantially non-controlled. So one needs to receive and understand the material information in order to have a substantial understanding about his or her choice. That's why we require that one's consent must be sufficiently informed. So in the literature, it's always argued that we need to provide sufficient information to the patient. But I think, but I have some hypothetical cases in my mind, and my question is, in these hypothetical cases, whether some partially autonomous choice can be regarded as substantially autonomous. So I have four cases. The first case is I call it a standard case. but the other three cases are some borderline cases. And the first case is that I think Faden and Beauchamp mostly have this kind of case in mind when they propose their theory. Wendy needs to decide whether to accept whole genome sequencing, WGS. She has a clear mind and a good educational background, and there is plenty time for her to receive and understand all relevant information. Hence, Wendy hopes to make choices based on comprehensive about WGS, and she makes the choice based on this information, that is the comprehensive information about WGS. So in my view, this is a standard case. But I have other cases. Case B is about poorly educated Paul. Paul, Wendy's husband, also needs to decide whether to accept WGS. Some background information. WGS is about one's genes, so usually couples needs to do it. Both of the couples need to do it. So he needs to decide whether to accept the WGS too. However, unlike Wendy, Paul is not well educated, and he can hardly understand the complex information about WGS. Although his physician has made the information as understandable as possible. And Paul feels that it's impossible for him to know whether to choose a WGS rather than any of the alternatives based on this information. So, but fortunately, he has a good wife, Wendy. She knows his preferences very well and can handle complex information. So Paul asks Wendy for advice on what to choose and makes a choice based on Wendy's suggestions. And the third case is that the information Wendy is sent to hospital because of acute disease. And now usually she prefers to have comprehensive information about proposed medical intervention. But in this situation, Wendy only wants to roughly know about what the surgery is and receive the surgery as soon as possible. And she does not want to spend more time weighing the advantages and disadvantages of all available options. This is because she continually experiences severe pain. Finally, Wendy makes a choice based on minimal information about appendectomy, merely that it's a surgery to remove the inflamed appendix. And the last case is like this. Felix is like Wendy. He has a clear mind and a good educational background, and there is plenty of time for him to receive and understand the information. The only problem is that his faint-heartedness. He knows that he would be too frightened to undergo the operation, although he really wants to if he learned the risks of the operation. I believe that many of us will be scared by the risks and the procedures involved in a tooth extraction, right? So Felix is like that, and so he does not wish to receive information about the risks of the operation. Finally, he makes a choice based on information other than the risks of the operation. And my question is, which choice or which choices in the above four cases can be regarded as substantially autonomous? According to Faden and Beauchamp's theory, I think people may believe that only the first one can be regarded as substantially autonomous. But I suggest we regard all four of them as substantially autonomous. And so I want to discuss their theory in more details. For more details, Faden and Beauchamp, they make a distinction between autonomous person and autonomous choice. It's said that they argue that it's one thing to have the capacity to make an autonomous choice, and quite another to exercise this capacity. And an autonomous person, that is a person with the capacity to make an autonomous choice, may fail to make an autonomous choice in a specific situation for various reasons. One of them they think is ignorance. In their theory, ignorance is a key element. It's something between autonomous choice and information, because one cannot make an autonomous choice because of ignorance, and so one needs to receive and understand relevant information. So we need to discuss how ignorance makes an autonomous person fail to make an autonomous choice. Unfortunately, Faden and Beauchamp did not say that clearly. So I can only reasonably infer their idea, and by this illustrative case. Suppose that Susan is an adult of sound mind. Actually, I want to say Susan is a person with the capacity of autonomous decision making. So in the literature, usually an adult of sound mind, people say that, oh, he or she have the autonomous capacity. So knowing that LASIK is a procedure that uses a laser to shape one's cornea, which can 就是那个眼角膜应该是准分子激光切除术，就是那个近视手术。我们可能就是听说过。And LASIK is a surgery like that. And it can make her get rid of her glasses. Susan agrees to undergo LASIK. However, after the surgery, Susan finds that she suffers from decreased vision at night. That is a common side effect of LASIK. Therefore, she thinks that the choice she has made is not autonomous, and she would have reconsidered her choice if she had known more about the side effects. This case is supposed to capture our intuition about how people can fail to make an autonomous choice because of ignorance. In this case, Susan feels that her choice was not autonomous. That is, the choice is, in a sense, beyond her control due to ignorance. This is because she perceives the difference between what she actually chooses and what she intends. This does not necessarily mean that she makes a mistaken choice because of ignorance. To be clear, Susan would still feel that her choice is not autonomous, even if she made the right choice, in which case she would not have changed her choice had she known the side effect. Because she would feel that even if she would feel that the choice was a matter of chance, even if she made a right choice. And in order to avoid I call it ignorance undermining autonomy undermining ignorance. I call this type ignorance. I give it a name. And in order to avoid autonomy undermining ignorance, it can be seen that one certainly needs to have a basic understanding of the proposed option. For example, I need to know that my option is to have my appendix removed in order to make that choice. However, it can be seen from the above case that one typically needs to know more. According to Faden and Beauchamp, one needs to understand the consequences of one's own action to achieve substantial understanding. It can be reasonably inferred that FB's emphasis on this information is out of concern for autonomy undermining ignorance. And if autonomy undermining ignorance correctly captures FB and presumably many others intuition, it can be argued that material information is believed to be important because it makes one avoid autonomy undermining ignorance. So now we can discuss another two questions. The first one is it possible to avoid autonomy undermining ignorance? And the second one is, if it's possible, then what is the scope of material information? For the first question, we know that the tradition of skepticism, many philosophers doubt whether one could have knowledge about the world. It includes the object of one's own choice and about oneself. It includes what one really intends at all. So according to this view, it seems that autonomy undermining ignorance is inevitable. But here, I want to say we are concerned about another type of knowledge. That is knowledge in everyday context, not in a context of skepticism. In everyday contexts, in some situations, one does know that what she chooses is not what she really intends. One does know that, although one may not exactly know about the object of one's own choice and what one really intends. If the use of no is understandable in the above sense, then I define that one avoids autonomy undermining ignorance if one does not find that what she actually chooses is different from what she intends in a way that matters to her. For example, in the above case, if Susan does not, let's imagine that if Susan does not develop any side effect after the surgery, then she would never realize that she chose something she did not intend. As such, autonomy undermining ignorance is avoidable in this case. Now we have known that this type of ignorance is avoidable. Now we can start to discuss what is the scope of material information. And my answer is it would be impossible to determine the scope if autonomy undermining ignorance is avoidable in the above sense. It's because the scope varies with the actual consequences of one's choice. To illustrate this point, let us consider Susan's case again. Let Susan be made aware that a common side effect of LASIK is decreased night vision before surgery. She nevertheless decides to undergo it. In this case, even after she finds herself to have decreased the night vision after the surgery, she has chosen what she intends. She indeed has chosen what she intends. That is surgery to get off her glasses at the expense of a possible unwelcome side effect, that is decreased night vision. And this level of knowledge is adequate for students to avoid autonomy and undermining ignorance in this scenario, but it's not enough in another scenario where student develops a rare side effect of LASIK. For example, permanent blindness. Here, she needs to know that a possible side effect of the surgery is permanent blindness, so as to avoid autonomy and undermining ignorance. Some might argue that we do not need to determine the accurate scope of material information. We can just determine the maximum possible scope of material information instead. But this approach is equally, if not more, unrealistic because it requires one to know all possible consequences, all possible and non-trivial consequences of one's own choice at the time of decision making. However, there's no guarantee that a medical procedure does not involve unknown consequences. One is neither able to know the unforeseeable consequences or nor evaluate the materiality of the unforeseeable consequences. Thus, it can be concluded that although autonomy undermining ignorance is avoidable in an aggregate sense, there is no guarantee that one can achieve it by receiving and understanding appropriate information. That is what is supposed to be material information. It means that one may still fail to choose what one really intends to choose, even if one's choice is based on sufficient information. Like Wendy's choice in case one, in case A, we have discussed just now that Wendy's choice is based on comprehensive information about WGS. I mean, even this choice there's a risk for this choice to be, Susan may fail to choose what she really intends, even if her choice is based on comprehensive information. Aware of this problem or not, Faden and Beauchamp adopt a pragmatic view of autonomous choice and its information requirements. They assume that one only needs to understand the foreseeable and non-trivial consequences of one's own actions, and they directly equate a choice based on a substantial understanding of that information with a choice that is substantially autonomous. By adopting this view, one's choice based on that level of understanding must be regarded as substantially autonomous because it's a rule. I think this view is unsatisfactory because it's no longer possible to maintain a meaningful account of autonomous choice. As we just have seen, even if one's choice is based on sufficient information, one may still fail to choose what one really intends to choose. And why should we regard a choice like this as substantially autonomous choice? So to solve this problem, I try to propose a probabilistic account. In my some theorists argue that, not argue, I think imply that it's impossible to maintain a meaningful account of autonomous choice while setting a realistic information standard for autonomous choice. I believe this claim to be hasty. In my view, although receiving and understanding relevant information is not necessarily helpful, for autonomous decision making. It does not follow that having this information is not helpful at all. This is because some information may be material to one's choice. Even it's indeed material to one's choice, then the person is able to avoid autonomy undermining ignorance due to a lack of that information, although she cannot avoid autonomy undermining ignorance due to a lack of other information. So I propose this account. According to this account, one has a good enough chance to achieve an autonomous choice as long as one minimizes the risk of autonomy undermining ignorance, provided that other conditions of autonomous choice are satisfied. Therefore, one's choice can be regarded as substantially autonomous. So I first gave a standard for substantial autonomy, and then I propose that one can minimize the risk of autonomous undermining ignorance if one receives and understands as much accessible information as possible that is likely to be material to one's choice. Then I define two information sets, S and S pair, S comma, 是吗？我不知道这个念什么。S and S pair as follows. S is defined as a set that includes all the information material to a particular choice, C, and S pair is defined as a set that includes as much accessible information as possible that is likely to be material to C. And the SQ can be understood as an optimal approximation set of S. It follows that one's choice can be regarded as substantially autonomous if one receives and understands all the information in SQ, provided that other conditions of autonomous choice are satisfied. From the above account, it can be seen it can be seen that the criteria for a piece of information I to be included in SQ are importance and accessibility. Importance means that I is likely to be material to a person P to make a particular choice. Accessibility means that I is accessible to P with appropriate support from others, for example, a physician in a specific situation. In terms of the importance criterion, in reality, a variety of ways can be used to determine the information that might be material for a patient to make a particular choice. For example, a patient can get information from a physician, family, or friends with similar experiences and the internet and so on. But we cannot exclude the possibility that a piece of information I is in S, but not in SQ. I call it the incompleteness of SQ. It means that some information is indeed material to be to one's choice, but one does not find it. We cannot exclude another possibility, that is I is in SQ but not in S. I call it the fallibility of SQ. It means that one receive a lot of information, but actually it's not material to his choice. And in terms of the accessibility criteria, I'd like to make a distinction between realistic accessibility and ideal accessibility. I think we often talk about is ideal accessibility. That is, it's often assumed that a patient needs to receive and understand all the information, all the relevant information that can be provided to him or her. But I'd like to and I think and I'd like to say that we should not discuss an ideal patient that is an ideally reasonable person. We need to discuss an actual patient in a real situation, and in reality, adults of sound mind. We are all adults of sound mind, but our capacity for autonomy is limited. Just as discussed in case B, C, and D. It means that at least sometimes one has to choose the information that is most likely to be material to a particular choice from among all the information that can be provided and is likely to be material to the choice. It's a hard choice, I think, but I think it's the best way to make an autonomous choice. And now let's go back to see the four cases mentioned before. And I think we all agree that when this choice is based on substantial. Wendy's choice is substantially autonomous. And what I want to say is that according to the probabilistic account, we can also have the same conclusion. That is because Wendy maximizes the risk of autonomy undermining ignorance by receiving comprehensive information about WGS. And in case B, C, and D, they have some difficulty in receiving comprehensive information, but they can receive a reasonable amount of information for various reasons. In case B, the problem Paul has is that he is not well educated. In case C, Wendy does not have enough time, and in case D, Felix would be dominated by irrational fear if he receives more information. But they can still receive a reasonable amount of information, and they are quite clear about that. So they make decisions based on less information. And in my view, they indeed minimize their risk of autonomy undermining ignorance by receiving that information. So finally, I'd like to give a concluding remark. In the literature regarding informed consent, before we usually stress that patients needs to have sufficient information, but now more and more theorists realize that a lot of information overwhelms a patient's capacity for autonomous decision making. So there is a tension between the goal of respect patient autonomy and realizing that goal by informed consent requirements. So to solve this problem, I propose another standard of sufficiency to judge whether one has received sufficient information. Before the standard is that the more information, the better. And now I argue that the standard of sufficiency varies with context. So the key message is that we need to respect an actual patient's autonomy in a specific situation. That's all. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Yeah, there's Q&A sessions. So in case we have here anyone who want to ask questions to Professor Cong, now is the chance. And also for those on the internet, in case you want to ask the questions, feel free to let us know. Either you type on the chat box or you just turn on your microphone and then talk about your questions. Okay. So any questions here that you want to raise here? Anyone want to say something about? Do we have a microphone? There's 有冇啲無線嘅 microphone？ 唔緊要啦，係啦。Any questions? And also when you are thinking about the questions, I should use my privilege as a moderator to ask the first questions. So let me ask the first questions here. Because when I'm thinking about your paper and your talk here, you have talked about the probabilistic account, talking about using some kind of probabilities to talk about autonomous. Then it is a very general question. When I'm thinking about your approach, it is related to what we talked in the lunch as well, about consequentialism, 後果論。我之後用中文。 Okay. Yeah, I will speak slower, and I will use Chinese to say again as well. 就是我用中文讲吧，就可能容易一点。因为我想问的问题就是，你现在的那个 probabilistic account，就是用 probability，用计算的说这个 autonomy 的东西，我的感觉是可能可以跟这个后果的东西有点相关。当然，你的后果这里说的就不是这个 pleasure 啊、幸福啊那些，而是在讲这个 autonomy 那方面的东西。所以，我有这个感觉，可不可以用后果论来讲这个东西？讲你的这个 approach，这个基本上就是我想问的问题，可不可以用比较后果论的方法来处理你的东西？这个可能就是我想问的问题。看看你什么？无所谓，无所谓了。我们都在谈的时候，都大家方便吧？就如果大家舒服的话，可能用哪个？
就是我不知道您是想说就是怎么样用后果论的方式，然后来解释这件事。但是我能想到的用后果论的方式，似乎会削弱这个论证，因为就有的人他可能会说，那你在这儿判断一个选择是不是 autonomy 的，不是是不是自主的？那其实你是看这个人最终选了什么，那其实好像就跟自主没有关系，是不是？
对我这个问题可能有点特别的，就是因为这样说吧，我们可不可以把自主本身当成是这种后果，就是thinking autonomous as a consequence。
比如说什么后果？
没有别语了，就是说 autonomy 本身就是一个后果，就是因为我们要我们的自主，就是因为 because of the autonomies， and that is the good consequence. That's why we talk about the informed consent and so on. Yeah, something like that. Is that possible? 可以这样说吗？
就是关于那个知情同意，其实有两种理论。第一种就是把知情同意当做一种自主选择，然后第二种理论的话，就是把知情同意当做一种有利的选择。然后所以就是这其实是两种分开的观点。然后如果是您问我自己的观点的话，其实我是觉得就是您另外定义两种自主也可以，就是一种自主就是自主的能力。然后在这里，其实我心里想的主要是把自主当做一种能力，而不是一种后果。然后，然后当然您也可以说，就是一个人拥有的自主，就是他实际上能实现的那些事情。然后这个就是他对什么，他能够用他的能力实现什么，这个是不是您讲的自主？
向哪个方向？我基本想的有点像你说的那个方向，差不多是，就比如说是自主是讲这个能力啊，你刚才说到的这个当然这个能力可不可以当成是一种后果，就在继续可以再想，因为我想的也不只是说这个有利还是就是不是哪一方面，确实比较可能接近你刚才说的这个能力的哪一方面。
对，因为其实就是在这篇 paper 当中，我其实就是把自主定义为了就是一个人成功的用他的自主能力，就是成功的发挥了他的自主能力，然后那发挥了还是没发挥，还是发挥错了，这个肯定是后果的东西，对吧？所以说就是这个可能跟后果有点关系。
方向来处理，对，基本上都是我想问的问题了。
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So now anyone who want to ask the questions? 是吗？你想补充一点吗？你现在讲多一点吧。后果的，think about that. Yeah, see if you have any questions. Yeah. Any other people? Any other ones who want to ask some questions here? 或者是网上的有没有人想问一下？
其实我想问，就是老师和同学们，我讲的是否清楚？就是我讲的，就是是否能听得明白？哦，好，谢谢，谢谢。
Yeah, account is a bit complicated actually. 有点复杂的，我的感觉那个推论里面，所以可能要看你的文章才可以再知道多一点里面的是怎么的推论。对，当然大概刚才你都说的挺清楚的啊，刚才对。Any other people want to ask questions?
我的问题其实跟他的问题差不多是一样的，就是你要看这个自主本能这个能力，然后我们用这个选择的后果来判断是否自主的，这是不是有矛盾？因为不管你的后果是什么，你能做这个选择，应该跟后果没有关系，所以这个是从后果来看这个自主，这个能力本身是不是在这个一个伦理上有没有冲突或者矛盾？
我觉得没有，因为在这里就是我们看后果的方式，不是看一个后果是否有利，然后我们是看就是假如说我心里有一个想做的选择，然后我要运用我的自主能力成功的做出这个选择，然后如果我没有成功的做出这个选择，那我的自主能力就没发挥出来，或者没有就是很好的发挥出来，在这种意义上的后果，然后我们来看它是否自主。但很多情况下，就是现实中，就是患者他们不是说没有做出选择，他们做出了选择，但是他做的不是他自己想做的那个，因为他就是一些限制。然后在这种情况下，就是其实就是我是觉得他其实是不自主的，但是为了知情同意，我是把它定义成 substantially autonomous 的，只要他就是最小化了自己的那个不自主的风险。
就绝对的自主，不管怎么看都没有，因为都有太多的外在条件。
我是觉得有的，因为在这里就是我开始其实中间定义了一个自主，然后我没有把它定义成就是上帝那种全知全能，他什么都可以做到的那种自主，然后我是把它定义成了就是说在现实的生活当中，只要一个人他事后就是一般来说就是没有感觉到自己在这件事情上，哇，我怎么没有做对这个选择，我对这件事情居然是失去控制的，然后那就可以觉得他的选择就放过他，就觉得他说他的这个自主，就是说他的选择自主就可以了。
Yeah, I mean, yeah, thanks for the presentation. It's just a follow-up of it's a follow-up question of the question of Benedict and Kelvin. So I mean, and I'm also wondering there's a tension between the consequence and also the autonomy here. So if you assume that there's some kind of right choice, better choice, the kind of choice that we need the kind of information that so that we can make it, then what is the standard? I mean, because when we say that we should respect the autonomy of people, then it already assumes something like there's no right choice. It depends on how you choose. So we have to respect your autonomy. But if you already assume some kind of right choice here, so that you know what information are relevant, what information matters, so that patients can reach right consequence. Then from the very beginning, why we have to respect the autonomy.
I think here, good consequences is inevitably linked with autonomy. Why? Because it's not I assume that there is a right choice. It's everybody assume that they have their own conceptions of good in their mind when they make a choice, and they exercise their capacity for autonomy when就是to realize their conception of good. So I think they are quite closely linked.
It means that everyone have their set of relevant information then, because everyone have different conception of the good.
不好意思，
everyone
这句话又太快了，我没听
Oh,
懂。
yeah, okay. Then it means that everyone
嗯
have different conceptions of the good. This means that everyone has their relevant set of information. So if
Yes.
this is like this, then if I were the doctor,
嗯
then how would I know what relevant information that I should provide? So it means that it can't be that subjective.
，can
It,
be 什
it
么
can't be that subjective. It
？can
can't be that
subjective。
this subjective to the extent that different people have different conception of the good, and then so you must have to assume,
嗯
you must have to assume that there's some kind of objective set of information that patient must know. But if you assume like this, then you already assume what right choice is, what good choice is.
就是说，您觉得我应该定义一种就是客观的 conception？
是要很是对对对。
你觉得我应该这样做？
But then it comes to a problem is that it will undermine the importance of autonomy.
呃
Yeah.
但是我不支持这个，因为我觉得我们
对
讨论的是 autonomy， 是自主，
对
然后
对对。
就是每个人自己的自主，怎么可能就是 objective？ 就它只能就是 subjective。
Yeah, but then if you take this point, then you can't assume that there's some kind of right choice that you hope people would make after they have some kind of information.
就是我想说的是，就是我觉得
Yeah.
就是那个 conception of good 确实是主观的东西，但是它并不代表说就是其他人就是不可能知道。然后其实经过交流讨论，然后我们是能够一定程度上相互理解的，虽然可能要花很多时间，但是我觉得就是它是可以理解的。
我就如果能补充一下，我就用英语来补充，也就我的看法是，从我对您的理解是，就是what is objective, what is good, and what is right is dependent on who is making the choice, and so there has to be some kind of there are some objective standards, like the doctor has to provide all the information, but whether a choice is good or not is dependent both on the intentions of the chooser, the patient, and the consequences. And so there is objectivity and there is subjectivity, but there is no absolute objectivity. A, B, C has to be provided in this case and in that case, but it has to be in context. I think in one of her PowerPoint, in one of her later slides, it was varies by context. So I think that's kind of the crux here.
然后我还想补充一点，就是我觉得说这个是 subjective 的，然后这并不意味着说就是说医生不可以劝说患者改变他的选择，就是有的时候确实就是一个人的选择不是最好的，医生看到了，但是他自己没有意识到。医生如果经过劝说改变了他的选择，让他能够自己意识到了，那我觉得只要他能意识到，那这种也是可以接受的。但是如果他自己意识不到，医生非要说这个好，你选这个就对了，那就是家长主义。
I think the line is quite clear, but let's go to that question first. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yes, actually,
Yeah.
就是这个，我觉得其实就是这得要再仔细看文中的这是同学是中国人还是外国人？
他香港人，
也
是中国人。
话说可以吗？好了，就是文中的定义是，就是在选择的时候，我们确实不可能知道选择的后果，但是只要我们没有发现说这个就是可能这辈子事后都没有发现这个选择超出了自己的控制，那这个选择就是自主的。然后所以说就是我们获取信息有助于就是让我们做出自主的选择，是这个意思。
所以你这样说的话，他这句话里面的后果 consequence 来去所以你觉得他这个跟 consequence 没关系了，是不是？
因为他说的是事实，就是我们做选择的时候肯定不可能知道后果，但是这并不意味着说就是选择不可能是自主的。
OK， 所以自主跟后果在这方面有点就是分开来讲了要。 我猜他可能是在问这个问题。
因为他说我们能不能知道这个后果，
对对。
然后那我们肯定不能知道啊。当
对啊
然，如果
对啊
如果就是同学也可以采取一种就是很强的关于自主的定义，就是说他一个人必须要在选择的时候就知道后果是什么，然后这样才感觉到对自己选择有充分的控制权。然后，但是这篇文章没有采用这样强的定义。
对对，也是。对，现在因为我的感觉就是，经过我们刚才一番的讨论之后，对我自己了至少，我开始明白为什么你开始的时候说你这个不是一个后果的方向，因为现在这样讲下来的时候，我就看见它跟后果的那一边的分别在哪里。所以就对挺好的讨论。
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so it's a very good discussions. So is there any other questions? Other people who want to ask some questions? Okay. If not, we are very well. We have a good discussions today. So let's thanks Professor Pong again for her contribution today. And just a very quick advertisement that basically now, of course, it's the end of the semester. So our centers and department, but still we will have some events in the summer holiday during the summer vacations. Say in next month, there will be a conference about cosmology or about philosophy of religion anyway, a conference in June 16 and 17, which is organized by our department and another center that is under our department. And then in July, we are also organizing another event that is supposed to be presented by one of our alumni. Okay, but that one is we are still arranging the situation, so I will let you know later. But it will now tentatively will be on will be in July. Okay, so there's kind of something that we are going to do in the summer. So there's the advertisement. So thank you very much for everyone coming today. So if no other questions, so we'll end the event today. Okay, yeah, thank you.